In the winter of 1923, deep in the cold mountains near a small settlement that would later become known as Ponte Alta, Santa Catarina, there stood a lonely wooden house surrounded by tall pine trees. The house belonged to a man named Eduardo Carvalho, a quiet farmer who lived there with his 8-year-old daughter, Helena. Helena was known by the few neighbors who lived miles away as a kind and cheerful girl. She loved walking through the forest and collecting small flowers that grew between the rocks of the mountain trails. But something about that house always made people uncomfortable. Travelers who passed nearby often said they felt watched. Some even claimed they could hear a child crying in the woods at night. Still, no one questioned Eduardo. In those days, the mountains were isolated, and people rarely interfered in the lives of others. One stormy night in October of 1923, everything changed. The wind howled through the trees, and rain pounded against the wooden walls of the house. Lightning briefly illuminated the mountains. Inside the small home, Helena sat quietly near the fireplace, holding a small cloth doll. Her father was drunk again. He stumbled around the house, muttering angrily. "You never listen," he shouted suddenly. Helena looked down, frightened. "I didn't do anything, Papa." But the man was no longer listening. Neighbors later said they heard shouting echoing through the mountains that night. Then a scream, a terrible scream that cut through the storm, and then silence. The next morning, smoke was no longer rising from the chimney of the little house. Days passed, weeks passed. No one saw Eduardo or Helena again. Eventually, a group of men from a nearby village decided to investigate. When they reached the house, they found the door slightly open. Inside, everything looked abandoned. The fireplace was cold. The furniture was covered with dust, but on the wooden floor near the stairs, they found something horrifying. A dark stain, old and dried blood. Helena's doll was lying nearby, but there was no sign of Helena and no sign of Eduardo. Some said he fled the mountains. Others believed he died somewhere in the forest. But what happened next is what turned the house into a legend. Months after the disappearance, a traveler walking along the mountain path reported seeing a small girl standing near the house. She wore a white dress. Her hair was long and dark. He approached her slowly. "Little girl, are you lost?" The girl turned toward him. Her face was pale. Her eyes looked filled with sadness. Then she spoke softly. "Please, help me." The traveler looked around. "Where are your parents?" The girl slowly pointed toward the house and whispered something that would haunt the man for the rest of his life. He's still inside. When the traveler looked back toward the house for just a moment, the girl was gone. No footsteps, no sound, only the wind moving through the trees. The man ran back to the village and told everyone what he had seen. But when people returned to the house, there was no girl, only Helena's doll lying on the old wooden floor again, exactly where it had been months before. And from that day forward, travelers began reporting the same thing. A small girl near the abandoned house, always wearing white, always asking the same question. "Please, can you help me?" But those who tried to follow her into the house never stayed long, because once inside, they could hear something moving upstairs. Heavy footsteps, like a man slowly walking across the old wooden floor, even though the house had been empty. For decades, the small wooden house in the mountains near Ponte Alta, Santa Catarina, remained abandoned. The forest slowly grew around it. The road became little more than a dirt trail used by hunters and occasional travelers. But the stories never stopped. Truck drivers passing through the mountain road at night sometimes reported seeing a small girl standing beside the old wooden sign that read Ponte Alta SC. She always looked the same. Long dark hair, a pale face, a simple white dress, and every time someone stopped, she said the same words. "Please, can you help me?" Many people believed it was just an old legend. Until the night of October 12, 2019, two paranormal investigators from Florianopolis, Daniel and Marcos, decided to document the story. They had heard about the abandoned house and wanted to record evidence of the supposed haunting. They arrived just before midnight. The mountains were silent, except for the wind moving through the tall pine trees. Their flashlights illuminated the old house. Even after nearly a century, it was still standing, barely. The wood was rotten, the windows broken, and the roof sagged dangerously. Daniel turned on his camera. All right, this is the house where the girl named Helena supposedly died in 1923. Marcos pointed his flashlight toward the dirt road. Wait, there was someone standing there, a small figure. Daniel slowly turned the camera, and the lens captured her, a little girl standing alone in the mist. She looked exactly like the descriptions from the old stories. Marcos whispered nervously, Is that a child? Daniel approached carefully. Hey, are you okay? The girl slowly lifted her head. Her eyes were dark and empty. Please, help me. Marcos felt a cold chill run down his spine. Where are your parents? Daniel asked. The girl slowly raised her hand and pointed toward the house. The investigators looked at each other. Then Daniel said quietly, Let's check inside. The front door creaked as they pushed it open. Their flashlights revealed the interior of the house. Dust, broken furniture, rotting wood. But something strange happened the moment they stepped inside. The temperature dropped suddenly. Their breath became visible in the cold air. Then they heard it. Creak. Footsteps above them. Slow, heavy, walking across the wooden floor of the second story. Marcos froze. Daniel, did you hear that? Another step. Creak, creak, like someone pacing slowly upstairs. But no one had lived there in nearly 100 years. Daniel raised the camera toward the staircase. Let's see who's up there. The stairs groaned under their weight as they climbed. At the top of the staircase was a narrow hallway. One door stood slightly open. The footsteps stopped. The silence became unbearable. Daniel pushed the door open. Inside the room was something no one had discovered before. A section of the floorboards had collapsed. Underneath, a hidden space. Marcos shined the flashlight down and immediately stepped back in horror. There were bones, small bones, the remains of a child. Beside them was an old cloth doll. Helena's doll, Daniel whispered. Oh my God. That's when they heard the voice again. But this time, it was behind them. Thank you. They turned slowly. The girl was standing in the hallway. But now, her appearance was different. Her white dress was torn. Dark stains covered the fabric. Her face looked pale and lifeless. But her expression was calm, peaceful. For the first time in nearly a century, she smiled. Then her body slowly faded into the darkness. The cold air disappeared. The house became silent again. Later that week, authorities recovered the remains. Historians confirmed they belonged to a young girl from the 1920s, Helena. At last, she received a proper burial. People believed her spirit would finally rest. But something strange still happens in the mountains near Ponte Alta. Sometimes, late at night, travelers still report seeing a little girl near the road. But now, she no longer asks for help. She simply stands quietly beside the old forest, watching the abandoned house as if making sure that whatever lived upstairs never leaves.